Hello, and welcome to the off-meta Umineko read-along podcast, the new weekly podcast where I guide my off-meta friends and first-time readers through my personal favorite story of all time, the highly acclaimed murder mystery visual novel Umineko When They Cry. We'll be discussing its narrative and themes, and they will work together with our community to try and solve its various mysteries. We hope you'll join us on this exciting journey as we delve into the witch's catbox. I'm Kyle J, and joining me on our one-way trip to Rokkenjiima, we have our readers, James Capelli.
Hello, that's me.
And Bardic.
Hey, that's me.
Welcome, y'all. So, how was your read this week?
So, I have a story.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
So I was on vacation up until last night. We're recording this on a Wednesday. And I was... Tuesday at 9 p.m. I get home around 10 p.m. and go, I want to explore Rokkenjiima more. So I spend about 3 to 4 hours reading the desired chunk for this podcast. And then I go to save it at the end of the episode, and it says, oh, can't save, exit. So I've been spending my free time today re-clicking through everything. Luckily, I read it, but I have been doing a lot more clicking.
Jeez.
You manually clicked?
Yeah?
There's a fast forward button, Ben.
I don't have a fast forward button on mine.
Yes, you do. We just have to find it.
Well, that's fine. It also means I'm doing a read-through. And to prepare for this, that's good, because I did find one thing in my read-through that made me pop up for this podcast. So it's not the worst thing, but yeah.
Hey, if that happens again, I'll just send you my save data to pick up on, so let me know if that happens.
Yep, sounds good.
For me, I have to remember how it went for me, because we recorded last episode last week, and at that time, I was caught up to this episode, so I will have to be remembering things. But I don't remember exactly how I felt during it, but I remember thinking, why are we doing this weekly? I need to read more now. Why do I have to wait for this stupid podcast? I want more.
It takes a long time to edit, Capelli.
Excuses.
Well, hopefully this should be a little bit easier then.
Yeah.
Yes, we are not doing 6 hours of reading this week. Instead, we are doing about 3 hours of the VN. The stopping point, if you are reading along, is the line, "The roar of the thunder gave no answer." After which, there's a set of shots of the various locations of the mansion, and where all the various family members are at that time, and then the clock advances from midnight to 6 a.m. If you're following along with the YouTube playlist, that is videos 7 through 9. If you haven't caught up with us at this point, go ahead and stop the podcast and catch up before rejoining us. Or if you're just listening to us along for the ride, welcome aboard. Alright, well, let's go ahead and hop into the summary. Our story resumes with the cousins enjoying their picnic on the beach while discussing Beatrice's epitaph. Shannon, being a live-in worker, joins them during her time off and participates in the discussion. They postulate on sweetfish rivers running through Odawara, the home of the original Yoshimiya family mansion, as well as if there are any locations downriver with the kanji for shore in their name. Battler is super excited to work on this new puzzle, but George and Jessica have already tried solving it 2 years ago, getting stuck on where to find the key. Additionally, it seems especially unlikely that Kinzo, a member of a branch family, before being head, would regard the historic home of the Yoshimiya family to be his beloved hometown. Without even a starting point, it seems the whole endeavor might be pointless. The next part of the epitaph gets even more confusing and disturbing, describing the sacrifice of 11 people. Eventually, the witch is revived and everyone dies, only to have everyone get revived and then the witch put back to sleep shortly thereafter. Battler and Jessica poke fun at the ridiculousness of the witch causing Maria to become angry. Maria believes witches are dreamlike people with mysterious power who could do anything in more beautiful dresses, and looks to the epitaph not as a riddle to find gold, but the precious magic to revive the witch Beatrice. Shannon then distracts Maria with a ghost story version of the witch that is passed around among the servants, misplaced objects, windows being left unlocked, basic forgetfulness and groans of a big old house, passed off as proof of the witch's existence. Cannon even claims to have seen dancing gold butterflies, and other servants have heard footsteps around the mansion at midnight. If you don't respect the nighttime ruler of the mansion, you might just bring down her ire. Apparently, one servant many years ago was injured falling down the stairs after speaking badly of Beatrice. This prompts Battler and Jessica to apologize to Beatrice, but fearful of the witch's fickle nature, Maria gives each of them a cheap-looking scorpion charm bracelet. According to Maria's occult studies, the scorpion has the ability to block magic and will protect Battler and Jessica from Beatrice's wrath. Having resolved that conflict, the cousins and Shannon chat happily on the beach for a while about Maria's occultism hobby until rain begins to fall.
So, I really like this because it does immediately delve into what is mystery versus what is fantasy, kind of that main theme that you said that we're going to keep bringing up as we go through. We have, on one hand, we have the real world problems of the adults from last episode, of money and the gold bars and all of that stuff that adults fight over. And then you have this child, Maria, who is just fascinated by black magic and witches, and I think that overall this fight between fantasy and mystery is going to be something that pops up, and I think that whatever we're about to witness throughout the rest of this series is going to really revolve around that, and whether or not things are happening. Like, things are happening, and of what nature are they happening?
Mm-hmm. I tend to look at it a bit more, not just this is the theme of what fans say. I'm starting to think this is more, the game isn't going to fully answer some of these questions. So what lens are we going to be viewing the story through? And right now we're seeing reality in the eyes of the adults, and fantasy in the eyes of mostly Maria, and the other cousins kind of like dipping their toes halfway. So it's sort of like leaving adolescence behind. Yet George is really good at entertaining one while acknowledging reality itself. Just gonna be interesting. You know, I don't feel like anything happened in this entire portion of the story that has swayed my opinion at all.
Yep. Well, even the servants seem to kind of imply that Beatrice maybe exists, and kind of they seem to ride the line between whether or not they believe, the witch side of things or just like the mistress of Kenzo kind of side of things. But
see, yeah, from my point of view, they're very much saying we've met her, she exists. That's all we need to know.
But does she exist? That's a big question in this part.
I think that they know more than they're even saying to anyone else, because at least the three of Genji, Shannon, and Cannon, those three I think know more than the other two. Though I still have my suspicions about Kurosawa, because she seems to know more in different aspects than the other three. So
yes, she at least knows the lore. She was going to tell some spooky stories. She seems to have some of the fun and mysterious aspects in the pocket to bring out.
Yep.
I think she's going to take on more of the guide/sage eventually.
Yep.
I do not believe she is going to become adversarial.
I agree with that. I don't see her as adversarial yet.
What do you mean you agree with that? You think she's Beatrice?
No, I don't think she's Beatrice. I think she's. We kind of discussed last episode how we thought she might be a third party.
Oh, okay. I remember that as you thinking she was the witch.
There's nothing in this episode that swayed my mind about that yet. We didn't see. She was actually one that we saw the least amount of throughout this episode, in my opinion. Her and actually Goda, we didn't see that much of.
Yeah, I can tell you why we didn't see a lot of Goda.
Because he's a prick?
Because he's about to die.
Well, yeah, I also agree with that, but I want to get to a discussion about who we think the 6 sacrifices are going to be at the end. So.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on then. With a typhoon brewing, the cousins help Shannon clean up the picnic and then head back towards the guest house while Shannon heads back to the mansion. Her break time over. Returning through the rose garden, however, Maria remembers the unhealthy rose that George had marked for her and runs off to look for it. However, despite looking for it for quite some time, they are unable to find it, much to Maria's frustration. Eventually, Aunt Rosa arrives. She attempts to help Maria, but quickly grows frustrated when it becomes apparent that the rose isn't here, and Maria refuses to relent, keeps crying, ooh, ooh, ooh. Slapping Maria on the cheek, Maria only continues to cry out ooh, ooh, ooh even more, causing Rosa to further lash out in anger. Battler attempts to stop it, but Rosa rebukes him, saying that she is trying to correct Maria's behavior. According to Rosa, despite Maria being 9 years old, her continued verbal tic has caused her to be bullied in school and have no friends. Rosa continues to yell and hit Maria, leaving the cousins stunned, unable to do anything to interfere between a mother and her child. Eventually, they return to the guest house without Maria, under the excuse of trying to respect her privacy. Frustrated, Rosa eventually leaves Maria alone to continue to look for her rose and returns to the mansion.
So content warning with this one is that there is some physical abuse from a mother to her child, and this is something big in terms of characterization for both Maria and Rosa.
Yes.
Because you get to see a little bit more behind Rosa's behavior. You even get a little bit of the narrator thinking, like, saying out her own thoughts, which I think is neat because this story does a really good job at characterizing and not just making these characters one-dimensional, but instead show that, like, even if they don't love the actions that they're doing, there's a reason for it, even if it's not an acceptable reason per se.
Yes. Like, obviously what she does is ridiculous and unacceptable. They justify it in the narrative as it being corrective of Maria's behavior, and we can see from the way that she interacts with her family in the scene in the parlor where they're discussing the gold. She is very much taking a lot of the abuse that she gets there and is putting that onto her child. As, like, the youngest sibling, she has no power, but with Maria, she does have power, and yet she is still failing. And so I feel like she doesn't know what to do and is lashing out in that way. Not that that justifies anything, of course, but you can kind of see where this comes from.
Yeah, this was a tough section for me.
It was.
Like, when I play RPGs, this sort of stuff is a line. I don't want to deal with it. And Kyle did warn me before we jumped in that, like, stuff like this can be on screen, which is like, all right, if I know to expect it, I can brace myself a little bit, and it wasn't that long. Fine. It's abused person, generational trauma in the 80s. Hurt people, same old.
Yep.
You can very much, again, see how the adults were raised by their abusive father. It makes me wonder how much of Maria's tics are kind of a coping mechanism for whatever her home life, her normal is, that she feels the need to retain some sort of innocence, some sort of her younger childhood self.
Maybe. It also... And then this is what hit me, as I was looking at Maria in kind of a self-reflective lens as well, as someone who is possibly autistic myself, like, and something I've never been diagnosed, but and I see it in a very autistic lens of just, like, these tics that are hard to shake and to really grow, and being bullied and all of that. It was hard for me to watch this and know that her mother wants what's best for her, but is going about it in the wrong way because she doesn't fully understand what is causing Maria's tics. And the whole thing was difficult. It was really difficult to watch, and especially seeing my own self in Maria when she was hyper fixated on this rose that wasn't there, and knowing that I get hyper fixated on things sometimes, and, like, even my partner will turn to me and say, "Ben, you're hyper fixating." That's a thing that hits me deep, because I'm like, I know in a different circumstance, in a less intense circumstance, that could have been me.
Yeah, it's wild to contrast how Rosa kind of appears up to this point. She comes across as very caring, very attentive, and then, yeah, it's a very sharp turn.
As someone who was the baby of the family herself, to see her daughter go through this sort of behavior.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little self-reflective.
Rosa is also under a ton of stress right now, if you think to the discussion, and that she's, like, not leading it.
Why did she need a lot of money right now?
Hers was that she is the co-signer of a loan. It's not specified exactly what the nature of this loan is, but apparently it's a quite sizable loan that she's on the hook for.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the whole Maria situation, we'll get some more insights into Maria's character and Rosa's character as we kind of move along.
Well, that's good, because if you said that we weren't going to get that, I would say, what are they filling the next 110 hours with, you know?
Yeah. Back in Kinzo's study, Kinzo states that this island has been cut off from the world, and that the ritual to revive Beatrice is to begin. He has brought together many sacrifices, potentially himself included, and he bets on the demon's roulette that he will survive to see her once again. He gives up the headship of the Ishiramiya family, throwing his signet ring out the window and into the night, which accepts it with a flash of lightning.
I did not think much of this scene, like, for most of the episode, or most of this, and then when the thing happens later, I was like, what did I miss? Like, I didn't think much about this ring at all. We'll get to that, of course, but, oh my... When I watched it a second time, I really put a lot of focus on it, because I'm just like, what is happening here?
Yes, the ring does come back, and it plays a major role in the second part of this chunk we're reading.
Yeah, is this the start of something? Like, that's, like, is it actually... If we're on Team Fantasy here, is this what starts it? Or is the mystery... If you're on Team Mystery, it's already started. And the ring was just a nice bonus.
You can't just casually murder a bunch of people. There's got to be some planning ahead of time. So clearly there would be signs ahead of...
Well, great, Kyle. Now I know there's murder. Why would you spoil that?
Murder?
Well, I'm so sorry, yeah.
We only thought it was sacrifice, not murder.
Yeah.
That's true.
Jeez.
They could be consensually sacrificing themselves.
You can't convict religious zealots.
It's true.
That's against the First Amendment. But we're in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm up to date on my Japanese amendments, sorry.
Oh, damn.
In the guest house, the cousins are watching TV, and a weather report informs them that the typhoon is likely to keep them stuck on the island another day. They discuss what it is like for Jessica to live on the island, and Jessica laments not being able to live in a city. Shannon then arrives to inform them that dinner is ready in the mansion, and is shocked to discover that Maria is not with them. When Rosa returned to the mansion, it was assumed that Maria had returned to the guest house with the cousins, while they had assumed that she had returned to the mansion with her mother. When Rosa finally awakens from her accidental nap, she realizes her mistake, and rushes out to the rose garden to find Maria still there, searching for her rose in the middle of a typhoon. Rosa apologizes profusely, and everyone heads towards the mansion. Jessica comments that it was lucky that Maria brought an umbrella, but Maria says that she didn't. She says that she borrowed the umbrella from Beatrice. Rosa, thinking Maria is playing, continues to try and get Maria to tell her who gave her the umbrella, to which Maria continues to reply that it was given to her by the witch Beatrice. Meanwhile, in Kinzo's study, Krauss is banging on the door trying to get Kinzo to come down for dinner. Kinzo is too engrossed in trying to finish his and Dr. Nanjo's chess game to pay attention to Krauss. Nanjo leaves the room to go to dinner, leaving Kinzo alone to ponder his next move, as Kinzo believes this night will be their last chance to play. Everyone besides Kinzo eventually arrives in the dining hall, and dinner begins without him. Rosa asks everyone gathered who had given Maria the umbrella, wanting to thank them for helping her daughter. However, strangely, no one takes credit. One after another, it becomes apparent that no one present gave Maria the umbrella. Despite several attempts to get Maria to say who gave it to her, Maria continues to claim that it was given to her by Beatrice and Beatrice alone. Battler speculates that Genji or someone else put on the fancy dress from the portrait and gave Maria the umbrella. An absurd idea, but barring the appearance of an actual witch, it seems to be all that he's left with.
This is interesting because you get into a discussion topic that will come back for a little bit later on who is Beatrice and who could have given that umbrella and what will soon be revealed as another item to Maria. And I didn't catch it in my second walkthrough, but in my first read through, I realized that my biggest suspect, at least for this, would be Canon.
Right.
Because he had a time that he could have walked by Maria. He said he didn't see her, but like who's to say he didn't? Like there's nothing backing him up in this case in terms of like, oh, I just didn't see Maria even though I would have ran through the garden. So,
well, it's a different area of the garden. Like his alibi is plausible.
Yeah.
True. Also, Maria was not very wet, so Canon being someone who arrived onto the scene later on, it sort of implies that the umbrella might have arrived earlier than that.
Maybe.
I'm not certain, because the timeline of the rain is not, like, given precisely, but that's just my take on the matter. It seems like Canon, if Canon was to arrive at that time with the umbrella, she would have been soaked by that point.
I'm of two minds.
That's a lot of minds.
One, either Maria is making it all up, the whole part about Beatrice showing up and giving her these things, and she found them some other way and whatever. Or what I think is more likely is whoever gave this stuff to her is convinced her, treating it like a game, whatever, be like, you can't tell anybody it was me, you gotta tell them it was Beatrice, because I am Beatrice, right? Right. I think that's a bit more likely. If the whole team mystery, I feel like that's more likely to be the thread that they pitch to us. But I don't believe that's what happened.
It's tough because, yeah, you think there's a manifestation of a magical witch that presented Maria with a summoned umbrella and letter, you know. That's fine. That's fair. We'll see. But in terms of Maria believing that someone is the Beatrice, right? I see where you're coming from, but does Maria really seem like the person that would play along with something like that? But Beatrice as a concept seems pretty important to her.
Yes. She was so upset when people wouldn't believe her. I guess, yeah, she was really upset that people wouldn't believe her. I still think she would. Because to me, it's...
She doesn't seem like the kind that would lie.
Maybe not... What's the term?
She might not be complicit.
It wouldn't be malicious.
Yeah.
But it could very well be that whoever it was convinced her that that is the truth.
Interesting.
The other thing that I was thinking is we can track the timeline of the ring thus far. Who knew that the ring got thrown out? It was the servants in the room in Kinzo.
Yeah, Nanjo says that he saw Kinzo's hand without a ring later on that day.
Okay, so people have access to that room would therefore be the top suspects, or someone who would say as much.
True.
All of the family were surprised to hear about what happened to the ring.
Yes, and we'll get more into that once we get to that segment. One other possibility for the Maria umbrella situation is that perhaps she just found it. What if it was hidden in the rose garden? It was something she just found. Would you think that, like, oh, Beatrice left this for me because I found these things hidden in a place that only I would look?
I've got a better question for you.
Okay.
Where's the rose?
I mean, that's a great question.
It's almost as if Maria needed to be in that spot at the right time for this person to be there to hand these things off. Who knew that the rose was marked? Could it be maybe a certain suspicious gentleman who serves the family and had the chance to be out in the rain at a certain time before the storm started and knew that the ring got thrown out the window?
Your continued Genji theory.
My Genji theory will not die.
See, I think it's canon. Doesn't that fit canon as well?
It is canon that Genji is...
Talking to, okay. You think he found out about the rose from canon. Okay.
Get it, canon, because...
Oh, no. I think it's canon the guy whose real name we don't know.
It
Sure.
could be several people are in on it.
Also possible.
I think canon is definitely one of them.
I think Canon's about to die.
Oh, you think canon? I do not think canon's about to die. I think we have so much more of him left.
As the strange situation leaves a sense of unease over the impending dinner, the servants out in the hall confirm amongst themselves that none of them gave Maria the umbrella. Canon asks Genji if Beatrice has really returned, and if they should inform Kenzo. Genji is uncertain of her return, but believes she will make herself known to Kenzo in her own time, if so. The ritual has likely begun, but as furniture they must continue to serve, even until their final moments. Dinner ends up being rather unsatisfying because of the malaise hanging in the air. Once it is finished, Maria excitedly reveals that she has also been given a letter by Beatrice to read to everyone. A beautiful Western-style envelope decorated with the Yoshirimiya family crest, a one-winged eagle, and gold leaf, and sealed with a red wax seal impressed by none other than Kenzo's signet ring. Recognizing the significance of this seal, the adults immediately begin speculating that someone could have duplicated the signet from a previous letter, and that no one can be certain that this letter is legitimate. All of them are afraid of what might be in that envelope, and what it might mean for the inheritance. Eventually, everyone agrees to let Maria go ahead and read the letter, as it's from Beatrice, not Kenzo. The letter reads as follows. Welcome to Rokkenjiima, ladies and gentlemen of the Yoshirimiya family. I am Beatrice, the alchemist for this family, under the employ of Kenzo-sama. I have served him for many years, in accordance with our contract, but today Kenzo-sama has announced the termination of that contract. Therefore, I ask that you acknowledge my resignation from the position of family alchemist as of today. And now, there's one part of the contract I must explain to you all. I, Beatrice, lent Kenzo-sama a vast quantity of gold under certain terms. One of those terms specifies that all the gold is to be returned to me upon the termination of the contract. Furthermore, I am to receive everything of the Ishirimiya family as interest. After hearing this, you may feel as though Kenzo-sama has been savagely ruthless. However, Kenzo-sama did append a special clause to the contract so that you would have a chance to preserve your wealth and honor. If and only if that special clause is fulfilled, I will lose my rights to the gold and to the interest for all eternity. Special clause. Beatrice has the right to collect the gold and accumulated interest upon the termination of the contract. However, if someone is able to discover the hidden gold of this contract, Beatrice must abandon these rights for all time. The collection of the interest will proceed shortly, but if any one of you fulfills the term of this special clause, I shall return everything, including the portion that has already been collected. Furthermore, as the first step of this collection of Kenzo-sama's debt, I have taken possession of the Ishirimiya family head's ring, which signifies the passage of the Ishirimiya family headship from one individual to another. I ask that you confirm this for yourself by examining the imprint on the wax seal. Kenzo-sama has already publicly displayed the location of the hidden gold with the epitaph under my portrait. The rules apply equally to all who can read the epitaph. If you discover the gold, I shall return everything to you. Tonight I ask that you enjoy your battle of wits with Kenzo-sama to the fullest. I sincerely pray that this night will be both intellectual and elegant. Beatrice the Golden. Quite a letter.
I love it. I love it.
I love how matter of fact she is.
Yep.
She's just okay. This is the game.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The epitaph is so like flowy and wordy and like Shakespearean is a word that Capelli kind of used, and then Beatrice is very just here. This is the thing. Here are your rules.
You owe me money.
They're gonna be good foils, Beatrice and Kenzo.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I like it, and I really like the way that Beatrice communicated. At least that whoever Beatrice is.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I want to bring up that I think y'all might not have noticed, I think is really interesting. Do you remember when Maria was reading the epitaph from her journal that she'd written down? She was kind of like stuttering out the words, having trouble reading it.
Yeah.
She read this letter stone cold, solid, all the way through, no problems.
Ooh, yeah.
Yep, I did notice that when it was happening because Maria is such an interesting case that we're not going to be able to break for a little bit, I don't think. Like, I don't think we're going to really know what's going on with her for a while. There is something different about her, more than just, like, the way that she understands the world. There's something physically happening with other people, and, like, she is, in my opinion, the key, like, both metaphorically and possibly literally, to this entire thing.
There is a line early on in the first hour or so where Battler, or the narrator, states that it's believed that people who are younger are more in tune with their supernatural senses.
Mm-hmm.
And that immediately struck me as this is a theme that's going to permeate the story. Maria will be vital to the story. So you want to know who I definitely don't think is going to be one of the 6 to die? Maria, for sure.
I also don't think that they would kill a child this early, but that's just from a plot perspective.
Hopefully they won't kill a child at all, but I'm not saying that makes her... I'm not saying she's got plot armor, but she's going to make it to at least chapter 3, if not beyond.
Final 6.
Well, my interpretation of the epitaph is that pretty much everybody will die and come back.
I agree with if Team Fantasy agrees that yes.
Well, even Team Mystery, right? The people who are about to die could vanish.
It's definitely possible that they're just gone for a bit. In the epitaph, there are 6 sacrifices and 5 wound or like stab and kill sort of places. So you're left with there are 18 people in this. One of them I think is the key. bringing it to 17. 11 died, bringing it down to 6. I think that there are 6 that will be left before the witch is revived. You could possibly take away 2 more if you tear the 2 apart to be literal.
Yes.
So you're possibly left with 4. But I do believe that, like one of our favorite social deduction games, I think that the number of players alive are slowly going to dwindle, but it starts with a big boom dandy of 6 people. But I don't think that they're going to be gone.
We shall see.
Yep.
This letter is really just reinforcing the theme and the plot elements that have been introduced as not just a passing fancy. This is reaffirming, here's your driving force, here's your plot, here's your narrative, so as it were.
The adult siblings begin arguing about what all this could mean, speculating that there is someone besides Krauss who is in charge of Kenzo's assets, specifically Kenzo's hidden gold. They then rush up to Kenzo's study to try and get answers, but receive no reply. During this whole segment, one of my favorite songs in the game plays, Fishy Aroma, or Suspicious Aroma depending on the translation you're using. It has this perfect "the game is afoot" vibe to it. I highly recommend y'all listen to that one if you get the chance. As the adults continue their arguments, Jessica is shocked by the way her parents are acting about the inheritance. The cousins split up to process what is going on, and Kyrie comes over to talk to Battler about the Beatrice situation. Is the person who is calling themselves Beatrice and gave Maria the umbrella and letter actually some other person hiding out there somewhere on the island? Or is it really one of the people we know? Was it one of the 18 people, or is there a 19th person on Rokkenjiima? Kyrie lays out the logic that if there was a 19th person, they would still have to be on the island because of the storm. But if they really are the legendary Beatrice, they would have been an honored guest. Battler brings up the idea of the Devil's Proof. If Beatrice wanted to prove her existence, she could just appear in front of them, but it's impossible to completely disprove the idea that there is a 19th person hidden somewhere. Regardless, Kyrie is nearly sure that the existence of a 19th person is impossible, as a result of turning the chessboard around, and thinking about what the culprit's actions from their perspective. If Beatrice really does exist as a 19th person, they would have had to sneak onto the island and keep themselves hidden the whole time, only to reveal themselves to Maria and give her a letter. Turning the chessboard around, it is much more consistent that one of the 18 people on the island wanted to make the illusion of a 19th person. Kyrie believes that someone likely did pretend to be Beatrice to Maria, but unfortunately the rough questioning of her has likely sealed off the easiest way to find out who was behind all this. Battler's father, Rudolph, then arrives, and with a strange, scared demeanor, tells Battler and Kyrie that he will need to talk to them later tonight. After some confused prodding by Battler, Rudolph eventually says, "I'm probably gonna get murdered tonight." After Rudolph leaves, Kyrie suspects that he wants her to come and make him talk about it, saying, "Figuring out the feelings of the opposite sex is an even more advanced art than exposing the tricks in difficult crime cases. If you ask me, romance novels have much deeper mysteries than masterpiece mystery novels." Kyrie departs to go take care of Rudolph, and Battler thanks her for helping clear up his gloomy mood. So, what do y'all think of Kyrie's logic?
First of all, I love Kyrie. Just
Yes.
One of my favorite characters, has been since the beginning, and this kind of enforced it.
You know who her character design reminds me of? I am blanking on her name, but the detective chick, the ultimate detective from the first Danganronpa.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
The kind of similar shade of hairstyle. Kyrie, that's it.
Kyrie, yeah.
Yep. Kyoko. I had 2 other people in mind, and I had Fi from Virtue's Last Reward.
Yep, same.
And Maki from Danganronpa V3.
Which one is that? I mean, who's Maki?
Maki's the ultimate babysitter.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I remember.
So she gives me such like side protagonist vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want her to die, and that means she will, because any character I don't want.
I've got bad news for you, buddy. She's not making it to chapter 2. That's my guess.
Well, don't say that.
I can exactly see what's going to happen. Is someone's going to find her, and she's going to realize something, and she's going to send a cryptic message, at her death, But I'm pretty sure I think I know who the 6 are. It's not canon. I was messing with you, but I do think Kyrie is going to be like the one character to die to make Battler emotionally invested with what the hell is going on.
See, I think that's going to be Rudolph, and I think Kyrie and Battler are actually going to be working on it.
That's the red herring, brother. That's just what they want you to think.
I think Kyrie is going to die later. I don't think she's going to make it to the end.
There's too much between Battler and Rudolph to not play with it more.
Not after what Rudolph said.
The siblings will be alive when we start reading again. I will put money on it.
All right. We shall see.
The father-son, you mean?
I think all of Kinzo's children will be alive.
Oh, I don't. I think at least one of them. I am positive Maria's mother is in the 6. Anyway.
But my point is that she is bringing a side of logic to this. But her logic overlooks one simple thing. To have a 19th person on the island, they didn't need to sneak on. They didn't need to. They had to be here already. And they already talked about how big the island is. The gold is hidden somewhere, probably on the island. I'm not gonna say I think it's impossible for the story to go to the mainland, but I don't think that's gonna be a big chunk of the game. So I think it's here somewhere, which we have now finally seen something that likely confirms that we have not gotten to yet. So I think she's really cool, and I think she's too cool for school, and she's out the door.
All right, well, Kyrie is not the only person that thinks there isn't a 19th person. Let's see what Natsuhi thinks. Natsuhi out in the hall is also certain that there is no 19th person. She believes this letter from Beatrice has Kinzo's fingerprints all over it. By not refuting the claim that he had given up the head's ring, he had all but confirmed it. She likewise suspects that someone, probably Shannon, wore a copy of the dress from the portrait and appeared to give Maria the umbrella and letter. Only Kinzo, in Natsuhi's mind, would go so far to try and make it seem as if the witch from the portrait actually existed. Natsuhi was certain that Kinzo must have heard the discussion the siblings had about the inheritance, wanting to tip the scales back away from Krauss's advantage, had sent this letter. Krauss, as the current heir, was the only one with anything to lose from this. Krauss had told Natsuhi that the gold was a myth, and believing him, fought by his side, trying to convince the other siblings that there was no hidden gold. And yet, Krauss ignored her and continued to try and compromise with the siblings over something she knew wasn't real. But then, during the small break, Krauss showed her something. A single gold ingot, stamped with the Yoshimiya family crest, the one-winged eagle. Krauss had managed to find the single gold ingot that Kinzo had allowed someone to take and verify to convince businesses to give him the loan he used to begin rebuilding the Yoshimiya family fortune. Krauss had known that the legend of the gold was true, and had lied to her and coldly rebuked Natsuhi's wish to help him. Natsuhi flees into the hall and contemplates her failures as a wife and a mother. After all the sacrifices she had made after being forced to marry into the Yoshimiya family, all her work had been thrown back in her face. At her lowest moment, she notices that Jessica has wandered into the hall as well. Seeing that her mother is in a bad shape, Jessica offers her the scorpion charm bracelet Maria had given her, telling to hang it on her doorknob tonight. Touched by the uncharacteristic interaction, Natsuhi promises to give her something she cherished from her own childhood tomorrow. So yeah, it turns out the gold does in fact exist, or at least there is one ingot of it.
This is exactly the moment we needed this plot element to show up.
Yep.
Because otherwise it's just so much of, there's a lot, it's just a lot of questions and we need something concrete. Here's evidence. And this might be the only bit of evidence Kinzo ever himself had to persuade all those investors all those decades ago.
I agree with that. The pacing of the story so far has been extremely good. And I think that this is another prime example of it, like looking at it from a story perspective. And the gold is just such an interesting tidbit of where did it come from, and it entices both the reader and the characters in the story to be like, what is happening? Like, and Natsuhi knows it now, and originally only Krauss and probably maybe some of the servants and Kinzo knew it. So how long before this really gets out?
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be leaked somehow. How interesting would it be if Krauss dies and they find him in the room? Or, I don't know. I don't think he will, but...
I I have a thought that I think Jessica is gonna die from this.
It's possible. I'm not gonna say it's not.
I think that Jessica was supposed to be safe, but because of the, I think that she gave up her charm, but I think that Sui is actually going to stay alive longer.
If I really want to tinfoil hat this, I would go so far as to start imagining that if Maria isn't part of the plot in some way, shape, or form, right? I'm even imagining what if Maria is Beatrice, and that explains why there's no father or whatever. And the Beatrice or whoever does the killing knows to not attack the people with that charm. So it's not so much that this charm has any real magical properties, but I think Natsuhi was supposed to die and now will not. I don't know if that means Jessica will, but I think that's why Natsuhi will survive, at least for now.
Yeah, I think that something is going to go wrong because of all this. I don't think that that was in the plans of whoever has this.
It would also be interesting. What if 6 people don't die? What if 5 people die?
That was what that's what I was leading into. Is I think something is going to go wrong, and I think it's going to be that there is one extra person that is now weirdly immune, and I think that Battler and weirdly Natsui are the 2 people immune from it.
All right, we shall see. Another quick note about the gold. They kind of talk about it a bit in the story that it's 99.99% pure, and they talk about how getting gold minted into ingots is not something that is done outside of like very specific places because verifying the purity and the veracity of the gold is very important. But this gold ingot has none of that. It is stamped with a one-winged eagle and no other information about who made this gold. Additionally, it's in a secret locked room that Krauss has that has like a weird little padlock on it that Natsuhi is not allowed to go into, which I thought was very funny.
We could really dive into Natsui and Krauss's relationships. This would be if someone was a therapist and they wanted to psychoanalyze this family, you could make content for as long as it would take to read this damn book.
The cousins finally meet back up in the parlor and decide to head back to the guest house. George carries Maria on his back, and Shannon accompanies them to hold an umbrella for him. The cousins ask Shannon if she wants to stay and play cards with them, so she goes to check the servant's schedule. However, it turns out Krauss has modified the schedule to accommodate the adults' continued late-night talks. Koda has been given the night shift in the mansion, Shannon and Cannon have the night shift in the guest house, and Kumasawa and Genji are to spend the night in the guest house. It would seem that Krauss wants to keep Kenzo's trusted servants, the likely deliverers of Beatrice's letter, far away from himself. Shannon wants to stay and play cards with the cousins, but Cannon chastises her. Cannon continues to lament that despite being furniture like himself and Genji, Shannon still tries to be human. Jessica informs Battler about George and Shannon's relationship, as they had made an excuse to go and be alone together for a moment. Meeting up together in the Rose Garden gazebo, Shannon and George talk about their pasts and their futures. George asks Sayo, Shannon's real name, if she is okay continuing on idly, as she has for the last 10 years as a servant of the Ashiramiya family. They flirt for a while, George having to order Shannon for her to be confident enough to say his name without honorifics, and eventually George gives Shannon a diamond ring. He orders her to accept the ring, but tells her that it will be her choice which finger she puts it on, and to show him her decision tomorrow. George returns to the guest house and Shannon to the mansion to think about George's proposal. She decides to go help Goda with the servants' room, and Goda takes advantage of her offer to have her go make the rounds around the mansion while he waits here in case the siblings want tea. Shannon goes around the mansion, making sure all the windows are locked. She believes she sees flickering light across the hall, and worries for a moment about the rumors that the witch Beatrice would roam the halls of the mansion at night in the form of golden butterflies. Might just be true. We get some ominous shots of the various locations in the mansion, and where all the different family members are at. Then, the clock advances from midnight to 6 a.m., dawn of the second day, October 5th, 1986. And that is where we will stop for this episode.
So I was reading this part at 2 a.m. because I was still jet lagged and needed to go to sleep. But the
witching hour.
Fun fact about fun fact about me is I hate suspense and jump scares. Like if it seems like something might jump scare me, I will hide like this and like just peek just enough to see what was happening, and that's exactly what I was doing in that last scene, because I thought something was gonna come. Because even though it's not rational and this is a visual novel, I was terrified by that point and went, all right, it's bedtime. And then it didn't save, and now I have to do it again. But
Wow.
Yeah, I was super annoyed that I had to stop because I've been wanting to read what happens next for a week and a half.
hey, we can do it after this podcast.
Yep, I deliberately chose that stopping spot. It is definitely the most ominous of the stopping spots. You get the feeling that, like, oh, we're just gonna let you know, like, this person's here and this person's here, for no reason. It's the next day. Who knows who wakes up alive?
I think they all wake up alive.
Okay.
I don't think that anyone's dead yet.
And it's going to be some sort of like a poison thing where they start dying in front of somebody else.
Maybe. I think that we still haven't seen the key choose their sacrifices yet.
Okay.
And I think everyone needs to be alive for that part. And I still think that we have more to hear from Rudolph and Kyrie.
Yeah, there's a lot of threads.
I think one of them is dead. I think we will hear more from the conversation from whomever is still alive. And that may make them an unreliable narrator.
That's fair.
Which is what you need in mysteries.
Sure.
I mean, I think that we have multiple unreliable narrators right now.
Like Kyle.
Weirdly enough, because of how the narrator itself splits between, like, different people's personalities. And, like, we'll say I, and sometimes say the person as Battler. Like, when I heard the narrator say Battler and not I, I'm like, who is currently the consciousness that is this narrator? I thought that was extremely interesting, and I'm wondering if it's indicative of anything.
We'll see.
Yeah, we will see. So what are y'all's thoughts on this chunk of the reading so far? Have you been enjoying it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
This really has set the scene, right, with the letter from Beatrice. Beatrice! And just more intrigue and interpersonal relationships getting more defined. I'm trying to think of who likes their parents. We haven't heard George talk about his parents at all.
Nope.
And I feel we're going to get more between him and Shannon and what his family thinks of that.
Yep.
Because she's rich, basically, with how much money she's made as a servant. So it's not that she's just some low-born girl, because I'm pretty sure it's clear that she's not.
I wouldn't say she's rich, but she probably has a decent chunk of money.
She's not a completely incompatible suitor.
But she is a servant. She is an orphan, and she's been serving for the family for 10 years. Oh, so one thing I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about George and Shannon's relationship as it's depicted in this part of the visual novel. I described it as flirting. I would have put quotes around it probably. Do you feel that George and Shannon have a legitimate love for each other, based on what you've seen so far?
Yes.
No. I think that it's one way. I don't know which way yet, though. That's a weird way to describe it, but I think that one of them has an ulterior motive, and I don't know which one yet.
I could see Shannon's viewing the relationship with George as the one quote-unquote real thing that she has that is not part of her job, her identity as furniture, whatever that means. And, with the little bit that Canon talks about it, that's something she holds a lot of value for. But for her, it's always been kind of fleeting, temporary, maybe. Just every now and then he's on the island, but now he's asking this big thing. It's real. You could still be in love with somebody through that. It's not going to be healthy and par for the course with, the people here. But the real issue at hand is the power dynamic.
Yes.
Yep.
George had to order her to do things. He didn't really seem like he wanted to, but he didn't hesitate. He didn't say, I won't, or make you do this.
He said I won't and then did. Was a weird thing.
Yeah, that's even worse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the distinction here is that he won't make her accept the engagement, but he would make her accept to take the ring and then decide what to do with it, right? It's still very weird.
Within 24 hours. You're doing this on my terms.
Yeah, him having to tell her, order her to not use honorifics with him, it gives... There's kind of two ways to read it, right? You can read it as Shannon is very shy, and she recognizes the power dynamic between them, that she is a humble servant and can order her to do things, and she cannot break that bond, but her love for him is causing her to break through that. Or you could read it as George is literally her boss, functionally, and has to order her to stop calling him sir, because she doesn't want to do that.
Yeah. It can be viewed as playful, because we don't get their tone. It can be viewed as weird, which is more of how I took it.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like the first half of that conversation was very flirty, very playful. George likes her a lot, and I think maybe in her mind she's thinking, you don't really know what you're asking of me. Which means you don't really know me, which means can you really love me?
Yep. I think that, talking about this now, George loves her. I don't think she loves him, and I think that that's going to be a contention point later.
Okay.
And it's going to make a lot of dead bodies the next day be very distracting for what she has on her hand. Which hand?
Which hand?
Ah.
Alright, we shall see.
Okay, so Ben, who do you think the 6 are?
Alright.
Because I think I'm right and you're wrong, based on what we've said already.
Yeah, assuming that we wake up tomorrow to 6 corpses, which may or may not happen, but if we do, which 6?
So we have... I'm looking through that little last paragraph you have in here. I think Rudolph, Hideyoshi, Nanjo, Goda, Jessica, and Ava are my 6.
Ava, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think you're right, specifically because you said Rudolph and Eva, and we need more contention against Rudolph.
I misunderstood. I mistook Eva. Maria's
Rosa?
mother, Rosa.
Same thing. You're gonna make this Eva versus Rudolph and Krauss, and Krauss has already shown he can kick all 3 of their asses together.
See, I mean, Krauss could be one. I'm kind of going... I don't have any, like, connections between the 6, other than I'm looking at the different groups of people and kind of picking the one that is most likely from the groups.
Fair.
Well, I'm gonna go a bit more detective and read into the epitaph.
Go for it.
So I think it's all 4 of the married spouses. I guess 3. Right, I think they're the ones that were supposed to die, but because Jessica gave the charm, I don't think Natsuhi is going to die. So that's Kyrie and Hideyoshi. I think Goda is dead. I think Kumasawa is probably dead. I feel she could have a role to do more, but based on who's left, who's described later on in the epitaph as dying, and Nanjo, the doctor who's been so relevant to the story thus far.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we're just going to go from one end of the table down to the other.
Ah, okay. Interesting. So you think there's only going to be 5 deaths?
Well, so I think those 5 are gone. Mm-hmm. The question is what's going to replace the 6th? I could see Jessica.
Yeah. Is Natsuhi monk protected, or is it going to mayor bounce? Yeah, that's the question.
Love it. I think that this is too well crafted of a story to make it that obvious. Weirdly enough,
I think it's going to be obvious at the start.
Interesting.
Because then you're gonna think it's going to be obvious. So that when twists and turns happen, it's a bit more dramatic. And what?
No, I'm sticking that I think it's going to be a mixture of siblings, and not because I think that makes it more interesting.
Ooh, what if... You know who's the most interesting sibling to die?
Krauss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one person who might have some answers.
Yeah. I think Genji also has some answers.
But he's not a sibling. I mean, of the...
Yep.
Of,
Yep.
you know,
I hear you.
Mm. Okay. And then I also want to get you on the books. Who do you think gave Maria the umbrella and letter?
A 19th person.
Beatrice.
All right, we're both going with 19th person for now. Okay. Named Beatrice or otherwise.
Oh, no, Genji.
You think it's Genji.
You think it's
Genji.
Genji. Okay, you think it's one of the 18?
Yeah.
I think it's I think it's the 19th.
Okay.
So if there's a 19th person, I don't think that's who gave her... Well, God, I don't know. I'm just going to say I don't know. I could see the story going either way and be interesting either way. I can't confidently give an answer to this question.
All right. Are there any other things you want to talk about from this week's readings?
No, stop talking so I can go read more.
Fair enough. All right. If you're going to read more, the next chunk of reading will be about 3 to 3.5 hours, ending on the line, "The witch exists somewhere in that X." After which, the clock advances from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Yeah, I was very happy when that was the line that was the end of this next chunk, because I was like, what on earth could that mean? Should we have a segment speculating?
I have no idea.
So we're gonna get through most of day 2. I kind of like getting... Did you guys ever, as kids, when you were reading books, flip to the last page?
Yep. 100%.
I did not know.
That's what I feel like this is. Just getting one line. What could that mean?
It's very good. I like the one line and just being like, because I had no idea what like the thunder line meant.
Sets a tone.
Yeah. If there's anything truly spoilerific, should I decide now to like actually make sure we don't have a spoiler in the line, or should I let a spoiler ride as just like a, this thing's gonna happen maybe?
If you spoil anything for me, for every spoiler you give me, I will kill you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm probably dead a lot of times over based on the things you don't know about that I've already said up to this point, but
I believe that. I think there have been some spoilers that we're just not able to parse yet.
Oh, for sure. If I was in Kyle's shoes, if the roles were reversed and I was in Kyle's shoes, I would fuck with you two so much.
Yep, I believe it. The thing is, I think Kyle could figure it out. I know I couldn't. Like, I'm just not that savvy.
I don't like to dwell on those sort of things too much.
The actual mysteries are tough. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, we've got a very interesting read coming up. I can promise you that. This story is not going to get any less interesting, I can promise. So, thank you all for joining us, and I hope you will join us again for another look into the Witch's Cat Box here on Rokkenjiima. How many other one-liners can I give before we sign off? Remember to think off meta.